I mean, I watched a guy jump off a boat and cut his testicles in half because he was drunk and he jumped on his propeller.
Hi, I'm Dave. Katya and I have teamed up with U.S. Captains Training to bring you a vlog about interesting people in the marine industry. On this episode, we talked to Captain Morgan. She's a lifelong sailor, a lifetime of stories to tell about sailing, deliveries, some emergencies at sea. Hope you enjoy. So how old were you?
I think I was probably 6. And it was my dad and I and his friend Ken Diggs and his daughter June. And boat was trailered and we put it in the water and we went sailing in the Bohemia River, and June and I were up on the deck by the mast, and the Bohemia intersects with the C&D Canal shipping channel, and I saw a ship up close for the first time in my life, and it left a major impression. And then when we went over the waves, the wake from the ship, I just thought I'd died and gone to heaven. It was the greatest experience that I think I ever had as a kid. And that day, Ken Diggs is responsible for changing my life that day. And I will never forget it. I was little. And the beauty of that is I kept in touch with Ken Diggs, and before he died, I was able to write him a letter and thank him. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah. So how about going in before that? So how about your parents and them?
Okay, so my dad went sailing with me that day, and then after that, my parents, I think they put me somewhere else, and they went on a charter and fell in love with it. And then we chartered a boat, and it was awesome. And I don't remember like where we were or anything. I don't remember what boat it is. I have some memories of it, but I remember it was wonderful. And then my dad and my mom and dad had a 1930 Model A Ford with a 440 Cobra in it. And my dad sold his baby to buy our first sailboat, and it was a Cal 25. And we raced that with the Columbia Sailing Association in the northern Chesapeake Bay for a decade. And it was so special because it was not who had the most money like it is now. It was families on family boats sailing by the seat of their pants, none of this gadgets and equipment, and they were real sailors. And there was a community of it, and there were other kids that did it, and then we would have dinghy races, and I had a sailing dinghy. I used to sail that, and I tried the lasers, but I wasn't big enough to keep them down. I would flip them all the time, and I couldn't get them back up, so I was too little. And we would all the boats after the racing, we would all wrapped up together in a creek and socialize and swim and laugh, and the adults were probably drinking. I know they were, but for kids it was just the best way in the world to grow up. But I didn't realize that everybody didn't do that. I thought everybody in the world got to do that. So I didn't know it was special until probably high school, when it started being a conflict, because socially I wouldn't go do the things that high schoolers are supposed to do. Instead, I couldn't do it because I had to go sailing. But it's not like I had to go, it's where I wanted to go, and it was really cool. It was a great way to be a kid, that's for sure. I can't believe my parents had the 4 of us, my sister and my mom and dad, on our boat, Cal 25, for 2 weeks. And it didn't feel crowded or didn't feel uncomfortable. It was just normal. And I don't understand how they did that. Our depth sounder was a string with marks on it every foot with a lead on the bottom of it, and I'd go up on the bow and sound for the depth, and it was on an old roll of toilet paper that was getting yellow and crushed. And not on there was a propeller on a string with knots. And you would put it off the stern and count the knots as they go over the stern, and that would be how we determined our speed. And you know that, now that I know what all that is, that's so crucial for doing dead reckonings. And you know, we're doing races at night, and we've got to do the DR plots, got to know your speed to be accurate. And so we did it that way. It was just really cool.
So what age did you and your parents start racing?
Immediately. Like
when you were six, 7?
No, I was probably like 8 by the time we chartered the boats, and then they bought the boat, and we bought it. It was in Annapolis. I remember getting it. That was so exciting. It was like better than Christmas, big time. And we got on the boat and we brought it up here to Sassafras. We kept it in the granary, and I remember, I mean, we did it every single weekend from April until October, and then March and November were spent working on the boat, and that was normal. That was what Dad and I did. And I knew at home, if my dad woke me up blaring really good music, that it was time to get up and go play with Dad on the boat. And it was something he and I did. I don't remember my sister there working, but she was older than I was, so she probably had other things. But it was fun. It was hard work because we were serious about it, and it was a family thing. I mean, how awesome is that? You can't get away. You're stuck with your parents and your sister on a boat for 2 weeks. And you're going on a big adventure, and it's awesome. So, I mean, there's a lot of crazy memories. My dad used to love it when my mom would shake the tang, because she never had brawn. And my dad loved watching that. My dad thinks he's broken the world record for the most pats on the butt, because he pats my mom on the butt at least 2 or 3 times a day, and they're 85, and he started when he was 14.
Wow.
So count that up, you know.
Yeah. Friends that didn't sail.
Yeah.
Most people don't sail, and most people don't prioritize it, but they all like. A lot of people like the idea and the romance of it. They don't understand or want to do the work of it, and so you try and get them involved with something that they like to do, like the food, or you know, whatever, make crazy drinks, or no alcohol. I don't drink on a boat. Boat's underway. I don't care if you have a beer, but you're not gonna have 6. But that's one thing that I am adamant about. You know, there will be no drunks on my boat, period. Because I've been traumatized by that. I mean, I watched a guy jump off a boat and cut his testicles in half because he was drunk and he jumped on his propeller. And then I got to deal with it, right? Because by law, I'm required. So that's one of the reasons why my boat is 35 miles away from where I live. Because in Haverty Grace, they dredged the channel and they built up one of the islands, and now all these little boats, I mean hundreds of them, go down there and they all get in the water and they're all drinking beer, and then they get drunk, and then they think it's a good idea to tow a boat with a grappling hook, and the grappling hook lets loose and ricochets back and gets stuck in a guy's skull. I don't want to deal with that. I don't even know if that guy's still all right. I just lost touch with that. But
so that actually happened. You dealt with that?
Oh, I can't handle it. When people drink on boats, I don't care if they drink responsibly or whatever. When they go to an area where there is drinking, somebody's going to die that year. It's going to happen. Just don't know who. It's just like a kid who's screwing around and doesn't wear a condom. You don't know what STD you're going to get. You're going to get one, but you don't know which one, you know? Same thing. Somebody is going to die. And every year, somebody dies out in that river. Sometimes it's a kid just doing something stupid. I get upset when parents don't take precautions when they have their kids on the boat. And alcohol's usually involved. I saw a bar up in Port Deposit had this great idea to make $1 a beer for boaters. What? Are you kidding? And so then you get these, scarabs and these things that do 80 miles an hour, and the channel over there is only 200 feet wide. And you can only go 4 or 5 knots. You can't get out of their way. You don't know if they know what they're doing. So there's one guy leaves up there in Port Deposit on one of those go-fast boats, comes flying down the Susquehanna and hits the barge of rocks at the anchorage. We call it the parking lot. His kids are catapulted out of the boat. Luckily, it wasn't riprap. It was small gravel, and they were not killed. But that's alcohol. And I mean, another guy I know killed his son by mistake. I don't know if alcohol was involved, but he had just lost his other son in 9/11. And then he was going down the Sandy Canal and wound up hitting one of those steel dolphins and killed his other son. I just, that's usually alcohol's involved. I would be willing to bet last night, was it last night or the other night, when they had the drowning in Skipjack, I'd be willing to bet alcohol was involved. So it's just something I don't mix with. I drank once on a boat, and I got a nice warm fuzzy feeling. Believe me, I loved a nice warm fuzzy feeling. But you know what I did? I lost my footing, and my foot slipped down the gunnel, and I scraped myself all the way up. And that was because I was not sharp because of alcohol. So it does not belong on a boat. That is something that I may be a preacher on it, but I really feel strong. I wouldn't smoke a joint on a boat while it's underway. You need to be sharp because you don't know what's going to happen next. I mean, I was right here and Jimmy Buffett came by me. You never know, If I hadn't been paying attention, I might not have seen it. But, there's so much. If you don't learn something every day on a boat, you're not paying attention. I can't remember what I learned today.
You weren't paying attention.
That's okay, because you're here. I don't need to. I can relax. But I'll figure something out. I've learned something today. It just matters whether I can remember it.
Alcohol always hits you harder, too. A day in the sun, you're out in the heat, and then, you're probably a little dehydrated. You probably maybe didn't eat as much as you normally would have. And you're that relaxed boating mood.
Yeah.
And then you start drinking, and what's normally 3 beers to get buzzed is like 1.5.
I agree. And if you want to drink a beer when the boat's at the dock, I have it a little easier about that. You just got to watch it, because this is not as easy as the books make it look. You got to pay attention. Got to have... The guys I work with, they say, and they can't really record this, but they say I got the biggest balls there because of some of the stuff I do. Because, all your whole growing up on a boat, don't hit the bridge, stay away from the ships. And now I got to go hit the bridge and pin up on the ships. I mean, what I do is crazy dangerous, but it's not, because it's instinctual. So, when you get to the level of some of the things I do down at the bridge, you got to be instinctual. Like engineers who are inspecting the bridge and it's blowing 25 and, there's high seas and the current's running, and they say, okay, stop here. Seriously? But I can't. I couldn't, but now I can. So, you got to just know what you can do. You got to pay attention to the storms. I have seen an anemometer peg at 120 knots in a storm. That was down the bay. I was running from Smith Island down to the mouth of the Chesapeake. And I knew a front was coming. And I'm sitting in the cockpit picking the crabs, because, you got to get crabs when you're in the island. And I saw the clouds coming. And when the storm approached, as far as I can see from north to south, there was an arch, and there were white finger clouds reaching down to the bay. And behind it was green. And as those finger clouds came across, heading to me, the water behind it exploded with energy. It was just explosion. And the front came closer and closer. And I had jack lines on. I had everybody with life jackets. I battened down the hatches, made sure everything was secure, and put on Gordon Lightfoot directly Edmund Fitzgerald on repeat. The repeat part was a mistake, but whatever. Because he says, does anyone know where the love of God goes when the waves turn the minutes to hours? Mm-hmm. And that happened. And people ask me, how long was that storm? And I can't tell you. I thought it was for hours. It might have been 10 minutes. But you couldn't breathe. You couldn't look into the wind and breathe. It was, 100 and some knots. So what I did is I, of course, had all my sails secured, and I hove to under power. I locked my wheel over and I just hove to like you do with sails. And I was out of a shipping channel, but I was still regularly putting out calls, security calls, just letting the world know that I was there and where I was. Our dinghy was flying. It was airborne. And it was, like a 10 or 12 foot inflatable hard bottom dinghy. And it was flying like a flag. And it was crazy. You couldn't hear Gordon Lightfoot until it laid down.
What's your least favorite activity when it comes to sailing? If you could make it go away. Is there one?
After I service these winches tomorrow, ask me that. I have taken my engine apart and put it back together again, and I was early 40s, and when I could still kneel and I could still turn the wrench, and I enjoyed that. But right now, if you want me to work on that engine, so I do not like turning wrenches. I know the information. I can troubleshoot and tell a mechanic, and I probably am right with these engines, but I don't like that. I don't like when I have to convince somebody that I'm right when they're arguing something with me, because I don't like confrontations. And one of the things I get concerned about is if I do a delivery and the boat owner comes, sometimes it's a major problem, because he thinks, because he owns the boat, he's the boss. No, because when the life and death decisions come into play, that's mine. And I learned that the hard way. So, and when you're out in the ocean, you never know what's going to happen. You just don't know. And to be prepared is so important. Always carry fuel filter wrenches and fuel filters, and keep an eye on your strainer and all that. You gotta keep those things in check. When things are going crazy, you say to yourself, I'm not gonna be here tomorrow. And when those words come out of my mouth, it lowers my blood pressure, and it makes me focus. One night, in the middle of the night, I ran through a pound net down Virginia. And I was right on course from a minor light to a major light, and I don't know why that pound net was there, but I plowed right through it.
And what is a pound net?
It's a string of twigs in about 17 feet of water. And up here in Maryland, they string a net along towards the shore. And then on the offshore side of the net is a square pound, a holding pen. And between the net and the holding pen is a net that's shaped like a funnel called a heart. And the fish can swim in it, but they can't swim out of it. And So the idea is the fish swim alongside the beach, and then they hit the net, and instinctively they will not toward the beach. They'll go towards the heart. In Virginia, the pound nets are different than in Maryland. They cluster them. And when I broke through one, I got in the center of 10 different pound nets. And the way to get out, and I had to think this one through, I didn't learn this from anyone, is I knew where it was foggy, and I knew where the net was, and I had to find the end. So I would turn 45 degrees. I would keep turning 45 degrees to try and find the end of a net. And then that didn't work, so then I went down to 30 degrees. I guess I started 90, and then I went to 45 and then 30, so I would cut the angles, I'd make them smaller, and so I would check more areas, and then I finally found the end of a net, and I got out of there, but that was crazy. That was going into the mouth of the Wacomico on the western shore, and there's a Wacomico on the eastern shore also. And that night I smelled the best smell I've ever smelled in my life. It was, if you could bottle it, it was amazing. It was in a cove, and it was a smell of the cedar and the salt water, and I think it was in May, so it probably had flowers in it. And I've never smelled that again, but it was amazing. That was the Wacomico River, and that was not that, that was 20 years ago.
When you make those deliveries, are you typically by yourself or always with another person?
At the end of it, I was by myself because it was a goal.
Okay.
It was my goal to run that ICW alone. I wanted to do it. I love alone. I love being alone on a boat. There's nothing like it. I love it. I love the solitude. I love I like the stress of it, because you know you're gonna make it, you just gotta figure it out. I like troubleshooting, and I like achieving it. I did it. And when I brought that boat up from Fort Lauderdale by myself, well, I kind of...
So how old were you for that? And what was that?
Oh, God, I was in my late 40s, maybe.
Okay. I thought this was the more... I thought you were going to mention
no,
the more
the
than
one
40
by
years.
myself, you got to get a lot of experience under your belt before you bring a boat by yourself up from Fort Lauderdale.
So what was your first solo delivery? Do you
Probably,
remember? How old
probably
you were?
like to Annapolis or Rock Hall or something, and I was, let's see, Bobby was born, I was 20, I was in my early 20s, probably, and it was just up here in the Northern Bay, and then people started, it's all been word of mouth. I've never advertised. Having the name Captain Morgan has worked very well for me, and sometimes being female is an asset. But what I would do when I would apply for jobs or deliveries or whatever, or even with engineers down at the bridge, I text with them now, and I just say, hey, this is Captain Morgan. They don't know whether I'm male or female. And then I out of them when I show up and I'm female, because they don't have any idea. Or there's been a few that have refused to work with me because women aren't supposed to do that, but they've usually been from Americans that have come here from a different culture, and you got to respect that, but it's still not too fun to deal with.
So that kind of leads into what Kaya was going to talk to you about. So do you want to swap?
Well,
I can steer, or just so you're not distracted, or you good?
I'm just asking questions.
No. Okay.
She's gonna be like me.
Like,
She's
don't
gonna
let go of the
die with
wheel.
her hands on the wheel. I gotta tell everybody, I'm never gonna stop. You're gonna pull my dead hands off that wheel. What were we talking about? Pregnancy and boats. I don't really remember being pregnant. I know that I couldn't I was offered to go to Trinidad and Tobago, and my
How old were you? Sorry, how old were you?
Okay,
when
so
you
my
were...
first pregnancy I was 20, and my second pregnancy I was 30. And one of them, probably the 30-year-old one, I was offered to do a run to Trinidad and Tobago, and I couldn't do it because I was pregnant. So when I was pregnant with Bobby, that's when I was offered a run, the Annapolis or to Bermuda race. Where's it run out of? Newport?
Yeah.
Or Annapolis?
Yep.
Or I don't know, one of the big sailing towns.
Newport to Bermuda.
Yeah, anyways, my doctor wouldn't let me go on a race like that. And that was very, very, very upsetting because I have not had that opportunity since. And then when Bobby was little, oh my God, I just put him right in here with a blanket, not in this particular boat, but he would go racing with me. And then when Elizabeth was, we would do every year an all chicks, no dicks cruise. And it would be, we would charter a boat and I was running it and it was like, you know, bigger boat, 40 some feet, tri-cabin, whatever. And it was usually my sister, my cousins and things like that. And they wanted to do a cruise and I was this pregnant with Elizabeth and I didn't know it was a girl. We didn't, you know, I don't think you could find all that out easily then. Maybe with Elizabeth I could have, I don't remember. But anyways, she was under 3 months old and the boat that I chartered was an old Pearson and her swing fit in the cockpit. And so we would just put her swing in the cockpit. My sister made her a special onesie to cover everything to keep the sun off of her. And thank God she was a girl because it would have been all chicks in one dick. So I'm glad she was a girl. And we would do that every year for years, but we kind of got away from it now. I mean, I still do sail a lot with women, and I used to race with an all-women crew. And we did very well in light air, but you got to face it, the men have stronger upper bodies and can pull things in quicker.
Oh.
So when the air got heavy, we weren't as quick.
Yeah, we can go to that red mark.
But we looked good, man. We had white shorts and
Oh.
blue shirts.
Grab the jib.
Well, so for the very specific parts during pregnancy or when your kids are really little.
Bobby, I have pictures of my son in a bucket with a bandana on his bald head. And that's how I would keep him cool. So he was that little, he could fit in a bucket. Okay? I don't think he was walking or crawling yet. It's been so long since I've had a baby, I forget ages and what they do. But I'm sure he was under a year.
Did you put a lid on the bucket and just poke holes in it?
Oh, no. It was the bucket that I used to wash the deck. And I had to get Bobby. He had to keep cool. And so I grabbed some seawater and I'm like, well, I use that bucket to cool me off, so I might as well just stick him in it. And so he had a bandana on his little bald head and he was sitting in a bucket and I carried him around like that. So he was little.
Did being pregnant or being a young mom at all cause people to take you even less seriously?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. You know, having a little kid on a boat is not a pleasant experience always. Now Bobby was fine because he was like the perfect child. Elizabeth, she was a little hard. But you give her a rag and a bottle of Windex and tell her to go clean everything. And that keep her busy for hours. And so, but she sailed with me the first time she went, she was 3 months old. So Bobby was probably younger. I don't know. I don't remember. And I used cloth diapers until I went sailing. And when I went sailing, it was like a big break because I would get huggies for it. So that was a big deal. And I never used Gerbers unless I was going on a boat. So the mother part of me was easier on the boat because I used, you know, pre-made baby food and plastic diapers. Whereas at home, I made everything from scratch and did cloth diapers. So I guess sailing just felt right. I was always excited to go. But I definitely couldn't sail as much with the kids. when they're at the 3-year-old, 4-year-old range, that's a hard one. You have, I don't think I ever stopped bringing them, but you have to be careful. Day of restricted visibility, she really had to navigate, and she was 9. And I helped her get it out, but I didn't do much. And then she ran that boat all the way down, and she did all the navigation, and she knew my shortcut, and she cut over the sandbar, didn't touch bottom, found the marina, and then you want to watch some boys get nervous. Okay, so whenever you have a woman and a kid docking a boat, everybody needs to kibitz. But you can't listen to them, because I know what you're doing, you know what I do, they don't know. So Elizabeth knows my voice only. Now she's at the wheel, and we were warping this boat. We had to put the lines on the pilings, and we warped it in. And the guys were gathering and kibitzing, because of course a 9-year-old can't put a 50-foot or 45, 48-foot boat in a slip. And that girl, she warped it and slipped so perfect. And then we got her tied up, and Elizabeth, the whole time we're getting kibitzed by the guys on the dock. She's going, I'm sorry, I can't hear you. It's exactly what I do. You don't want to be rude, because they could be your next customer. So she shut the engine down. She put her hand on her hip, and she looked at the guys gathered, and she said, now, what do you have to say? And I about lost it. It was so funny, because we did like the perfect job getting that boat in. But that was fun. But Elizabeth, she's got a lot of hours out here. On my 50th birthday, we sailed a delivery boat from Cape May up to maybe Manasquan. That's what and it was on my 50th birthday. So it was 12 years ago next week. It was one of the best days of my life. We got out of Cape May, we put the sails up, and we just sailed up the coast. It was perfect. Oh my God, that's when she was figuring out college and everything.
How about your son? Does he sail?
Bobby, he's so awesome. He went with the Boy Scouts. He stayed a Boy Scout, and he worked hard and got the Eagle Scout badge. And Bobby has less hours on a boat than Elizabeth, by a lot. Elizabeth knows way more. But I think the Boy Scouts gave Bobby the confidence that you have to take the boat out. And Elizabeth gets nervous. She doesn't have the same confidence Bobby has. And I attribute that to the Boy Scouts, because she could do it. If she's on a boat and trouble breaks out, she takes control immediately. She's done that a couple times with other people. And of course, I'm like, that's my girl. She's phenomenal, but she just doesn't prioritize it now, and that's probably one of the saddest things in my world, because I got this boat hoping the family would bond and get back together on it, and I was hoping for that. But well, you guys know, because you're doing it, sailing is a huge commitment. There's always going to be, particularly for women, oh, you're just out playing on those boats. Nobody thinks it's a job. Mm-hmm. Nobody thinks I've ever worked. So that's why I always say I retired in my 20s. And I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've heard that, but I don't think you've ever heard that, have you? Do you hear that?
I've heard that from time to time.
Okay. People don't respect that this is work.
Well, I've heard it before I've gotten my captain's license.
Okay. Well, that's how you got to get your captain's license. You got to go play around on boats.
Yeah.
That's why this is the river rat, because Wind in the Willows. In that book, it states the river rat says there's nothing nearly as important as just messing about on boats. That's how I named this boat. But you got to mess around on boats, or you're not going to get the knowledge you need to survive the big things.
What do you think you're better at on the boat, on the sailboat, simply because you're a woman?
Okay, so women, there's a way I would teach it is there's thinking pink and there's thinking blue. Pink is delicate, soft little motions, a little bit of throttle, a little bit of wheel movement, easy going. That's pink. Blue is harder throttle, bigger motion, stronger, stiffer stuff. That's blue. You need to be able to do both because when the shit hits the fan, you better be blue. But I think when you teach docking to a couple, I think the female should always be on the helm because females naturally think pink. It's got something to do with, I don't know what it's got to do with, but men are more edgy. I don't know how to explain it. But pink and blue, I think, explains it enough. So when I teach a couple how to dock, I put the female on the helm. And where do you need the upper body strength when you're docking a boat? You need it with the dock lines. So why does the man always stay at the wheel and the woman, it doesn't make sense. That's backwards. So I teach it the other way. Women have to sail different than men. Women, the strongest muscles that we have are in our thighs. So we have to use our thighs more than our arms. There's a reason my shoulder's been replaced. You know, because I've been doing this for 50 years. So when it's hard, when you got heavy air, you need to be very careful of where you place your body. And you don't twist your back and you straddle the winch. You get right on over it like this. And you grind it like this because you're using your legs. And that's how you've got to do it. Whereas a man doesn't have to do that. I know that looks funny. But
No,
that's what you gotta do. You're grinding. I'm grinding. I can twerk too.
Have you ever sailed with somebody that was clearly not as good of a sailor but wanted to be in charge?
Oh God, yes. Hard. You gotta be delicate. You better think pink on that one. A kerchunk is done by the Yanmar. A thunk is done under the water. So many words.